The Minnesota primary obviously had winners and losers, but the most impressive win to us was you, the voter, because you broke an all-time record for turnout to make your choice known. Here's Charlotte Cicero.
Results are rolling into the newsroom as we speak.
Minnesota knew this year's primary would be one to watch.
There's a lot of intensity, a lot of passion out there on both sides of the political aisle, and people really showed up.
What people didn't know,
just a hint of what's to come,
was this.
We had never hit 1 million before, and we shot past 1 million and yesterday reached over 1.1 million.
1.1 million votes, a number Secretary of State Steve Simon says is the most Minnesota has ever seen in a primary election.
By the way, we shattered the record. It wasn't even that close.
He's referencing the voter turnout from 2018, which saw almost 200,000 fewer ballots.
They stepped up, they stood up, and they decided to be voters.
Simon, along with political analyst David Schultz,
a lot of things came together for the perfect storm for this incredible turnout.
Help us understand why the turnout topped all totals.
Minnesota broke the record this year for voters in the primary.
It did, and there's lots of reasons for it.
Reasons like the political climate following events like Operation Metro Surge.
The first voting that people really had post-Metro Surge to really express themselves.
Another reason, heavily watched races like the DFL nomination for U.S. Senate seat, which highlighted differences within the Democratic Party.
I really attribute it to a number of really competitive, passionate contests on both sides of the aisle.
You've got competitive elections. You have the divide in the Democratic Party between the more establishment versus the progressives.
Another reason, the rise in younger voters.
The get out the vote activity was at a level we've never seen at all in Minnesota history.
Campaigns are taking notice of the fact that they have to communicate a little bit differently and through other means in order to reach those younger voters. These are races that not only featured candidates people cared about, but there was this perceived closeness in the polls and otherwise, which said to people, hey, you better go out and vote. This could be a real nail biter. We really need your vote. And that's what tends generally to drive primary turnout and what definitely did on Tuesday.
Both say they're watching, but don't expect these numbers to lower as we approach November's general election.
We want to be top of the heap, and we are in most years #1 in the general election in turnout. So breaking this kind of record means we're in a good position to break more records this fall when we get to the big general election.
I have every reason to believe that the momentum that we saw right now, culminating in the primary, is not going to dissipate.
Now, to put this in perspective of a voter turnout for a general election in Minnesota, 2022's general election saw 2.5 million voters, and then in 2024, almost 3.3 million voters. The Secretary of State's office told us today those 1 million votes in the primary make up a quarter of total eligible voters in the state, and that's a lower ratio than the numbers show from a general election. The Secretary of State's office will review and certify those primary election results before presenting them next week. Jana?
Well, I think they just summed it up in the end. If you got 1 million people voting in the primary, we're probably going to break that 3.3 or 3.1 in November for certain.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And David and Steve talked a lot about this today, that these younger voters, especially with the rise in social media and all these political ads we're seeing, could contribute to a really high voter turnout come November.
All right, Charlotte, we appreciate you. Thanks for the report.